Data from the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission shows the country produced 159.15 million barrels of crude oil in the first 4 months of this year. Meanwhile, Nigeria is wooing investors from the United Arab Emirates for a new oil exploration deal. Oyeyemi Oke, partner at A2 Law, joins me now to discuss these and more. Oyeyemi, thank you for taking the time out to join us today.
Thanks for having me, Esther. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Let's get right to it. Just looking at the oil output in the first 4 months of this year, according to the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, data from the NUPRC, Nigeria produced about 1.28 million barrels per day of oil. But we do have a conflicting figure from the NNPC, which puts it somewhere around 1.7. Just wanted you to quickly clear that up for us. But because at 1.28, that would have fallen short of the 2024 budget projections or benchmark for the fiscal authorities. But let's have you share your thoughts on this one.
Okay, so there seems to be a bit of a discordant tune, obviously, between NNPCL and the Commission, the NUPRC. And it begs the question, who should we believe at this point? And my views would be that to err on the side of caution, I would rather go with the numbers from the regulator, considering that the regulator has, one, regulatory oversight over the industry, then two, there's a likelihood that the regulator may have wider data in terms of the numbers of crude oil pumped out of Nigeria. So in my view, to take a conservative approach, I would take the views of the regulator, which puts the figure at 1.28 million barrels per day. That is not so good for us, considering that we have the target of 1.7 million barrels per day as a country. And if you look at even what OPEC has allowed us to pump in terms of our quantity that can be pumped out for now in terms of quota, it is at about 1.3 million barrels. So perhaps maybe NNPC needs to relook at these figures, and if he believes that the figures which the Commission has is not reflective of the scenario, the current circumstance, perhaps there's need for reconciliation. But my views are we go with the figures from the NUPRC at 1.28, which appears to perhaps correlate with what should be our reasonable pump out flow rate in terms of figures if we look at this vis-a-vis the OPEC figures.
Right, because in looking at the numbers from the NNPCL at somewhere around 1.7, and the stories around it are that, several sabotage points obviously were discovered, illegal refineries discovered, destroyed, and, those issues addressed. Do you get a sense that we are getting a firm grip on the level of oil theft that's happening in the oil-producing areas?
So in terms of the level of theft that is happening, I mean, you and I know that perhaps this is a parallel industry on its own in terms of stealing of crude oil. And we've seen various instances whereby the NNPCL and perhaps security agencies have also uncovered crude theft. So perhaps maybe the numbers which the NNPC has includes numbers that have been recovered from crude theft, or perhaps numbers which includes volumes that have been recovered from vandalism and theft. But definitely, one of the banes of the industry continues to be security. And as at now, most of the pipelines are no longer reliable, and our producers are looking at options of barging and trucking to ensure that operations go ahead.
Let's talk about investments now, on investment side of things. It's in the news that the Nigerian authorities are trying to woo investors from the United Arab Emirates to the oil industry. I mean, what comes to mind for you in terms of what opportunities exist for these investors? But then when one thinks about, I mean, just also in the news recently, I believe it was Total Energies talking about, taking an investment worth about $6 billion to Angola, another oil country, rival of Nigeria. So just talking about, I mean, what are the pros and cons? Do the benefits outweigh the cons for any would-be investor into Nigeria's oil and gas sector today?
So, I mean, if we have, or what we should bear in mind is that investors, there is always a competition for where funds or projects should be deployed. And investors would always look at various, perhaps what I would say, risk, both in-country risk and perhaps other risk before making a decision. It's quite unfortunate that perhaps the like of Total Energies have to deploy funds or commit to projects that are not Nigerian projects and have gone to other African countries. Now, for me, the issue is we should look at why some of these things have been done, right? And for me, one of the major issues we should consider is has to do with security. Security continues to be a problem that needs to be tackled headlong, because if I deploy 1 naira as an investor with the hope of getting 60 cents or 30 cents as profits, if security is taking more than half of that in terms of loss, then perhaps I need to look at other jurisdictions to invest my money. So we need to we need to look at that seriously. Also, another thing is issues around fiscal incentives. I think this government has taken good steps in terms of providing incentives for the oil and gas industry, especially with regards to gas and gas utilization projects. I would say things around FX risk also needs to be addressed, because if these are not addressed, obviously we'll be seeing our monies for projects that ought to have been committed to the Nigerian jurisdiction go somewhere else.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Oyeyemi, for talking to us today. We appreciate your time on the show. Oyeyemi Oke, partner at EO2 Law.